This business is not difficult. You basically need a good source of deals and a good source of funding. Immediately, we went from being really quite creditworthy to being completely unmortgageable. Running a letting agency is hard work. Dealing with tenants is hard work. Dealing with the staff to look after your tenants is hard work. Property development isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. You really have to work for your money. Everyone wants £1 million or £10 million for everything. That are the two go-to figures, nice and round. When money's involved, emotions take over and your brain doesn't always work like it should. Every site is a lot more complicated than you imagine. You look at stuff and think it's straightforward, and I've not had anything straightforward. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with people's lives, and that's why you need to have a big pipeline of deals. As a developer, you need to be completely on the ball. We're not the new kids on the block, not gone and rented a Lamborghini and taken a couple of YouTube videos and said, I can do it. My purpose for business is to be in business for a long time.
Hi everybody, hope you are good. Today we are joined by Mr. Kris Carpenter. How are you today, Kris?
Yeah, very good, thank you, Sam. Very good.
Good. So Kris specialises in site acquisitions, property development, fundraising, while seeking out opportunities nationwide, whether they've got planning permission or not, maximising land values for landowners, and making a good return for investors. You've got experience with SaaS funding, joint ventures, permitted development, planning applications, land promotions, and much more. The Quattro Property Services group is a traditional property development company based in York. They work on deals ranging from 1 to 50 units and residential, commercial sites up to 20 million GDV, which is a very big number. And you've also had your experience with letting agencies, contracting businesses. So there's going to be lots of insight, I think, today.
Yeah, I've basically spent the last 15 or so years working in this crazy market. And I've done a variety of things. The things that have worked, I've done more of. The things that haven't worked, I've moved on and moved off to different things. So I won't say I'm a veteran of the industry yet, but I've definitely done a lot of deals and I've got a lot of experience in this market. And I think the changes that are coming on from all angles at the moment just mean that you've really got to kind of be aware of what's happening and really try and get that experience as fast as you can, because it's a dangerous place, the property market, if you get it wrong.
We were just talking about the stresses of it, but it's, yes, every day is a school day. You've got a wealth of experience, to be fair. But it's almost like never enough. And I think that's the kind of curse of the entrepreneur, the person that is out there taking all these risks. It's like, I always have more to learn. And I think that hunger keeps you actually on the right side of risk. But before we dive into all of those little escapades that you've had along the way and had some highs and lows, I'm sure, what I would like to know a little bit about the person actually, that is what drives you and what's made you. And starting with the kind of person you were at school, were you a very studious person? Were you a rebel? Were you easily distracted?
Yeah, so I struggled at primary school and getting settled in. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with dyslexia that it became apparent where my difficulties were. So up until I was probably 13, 14, I was like the worst kid in the class. I was the kid that you didn't want to, you didn't want your son or daughter to bring home. I was a nightmare. I was an absolute nightmare. I'll give you a couple of examples. So I remember when I moved into high school, I dyed a bit of my hair green at the front and they suspended me. And so I got an extra week's holiday. Basically, it was the last week before summer holidays. So the next year, I did exactly the same thing again, but blue, and got an extra week's holiday. And I just really didn't care. I really struggled. That culminated with me actually getting expelled. And so I think when I was 14, I was expelled from a very good school. And at that point, I had to have this sort of the wake up epiphany call and sort of pull myself together. So I went from being expelled from one school, moving schools, pulling myself together and being a prefect by the time I left. So I kind of turned it round when it counted. Amazing. And yeah, I did. I sort of pulled it around, turned around, managed to get my GCSEs and my A-levels and into uni, etc. But it was a close run thing for a while.
Whoa, from rebel to prefect to role model.
Yeah, within for like 4 years. So.
Rebel to role model. That's a pretty impressive turnaround. What was it? What do you think was that suddenly triggered you to think, right, you know what, actually, I'm going to fix up, look sharp?
I think I could just see the way my life was moving forwards, and just make a decision, don't you, to change. So that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I followed Russell Brand for many years, and he's and a lot of people that go down this kind of rebellious streak, and they say that they're either going to end up dead or in jail if they keep on that path.
Yeah, I think I was probably on a similar sort of course during my adolescent years, but it all turned out well in the end for me. All turned out well.
So. From prefect, did you do your A-levels? Did you go to uni?
Yeah, so I finished my A-levels and actually took a year out straight away. So 18, I packed a rucksack and headed off to India. Nice. Spent 6 months in India. Wow. And then another sort of 6 months traveling around Asia, etc. So I was probably a year or so younger, a couple of years younger than when most people do that. But I had it was a life-changing experience again. I did my sort of TEFL course, teaching English as a foreign language. And I got a job in a Tibetan monastery. So I lived in a monastery for 4 months. And it was all very cool, all very cool.
From rebel to role model to monk.
In essence, yeah, you could say that. So I kind of did that on my own and met people as we went along. So yeah, that was good. Yeah. Then came back and went to Newcastle Uni. And so got my degree from Newcastle, which was another exciting time. And so whilst I was at uni, I was an officer training corps in the army. So I had sort of like a part-time job. Okay. And that kind of led me into the military, sort of post-uni.
What did you study at uni?
I did psychology.
Interesting.
Yes, there was 90 females, 10 males on the course.
That's a good balance.
Yeah, and 5 of the guys were gay, so we had a really good degree basically.
Very good. So it was easy to focus in class then, I guess, in lectures and stuff.
Yeah, I did all right. I needed a 2-1 and I got my 2-1, and that was.
Why psychology? What was it about psychology? I mean, you've had a very interesting kind of upbringing then, your formative years from going traveling in India, having that very different experience to growing up in the UK, almost a third world country probably in kind of those years. And then coming back to study psychology, what was what's more interesting than people? Yeah. Psychology is a seriously interesting subject. Oh, most of my friends were bored to tears doing their degrees in accountancy or law or medicine. And I was fascinated. It was a genuinely interesting degree. I did my dissertation on female attractiveness of all things. Wow. So it was just really interesting things. I mean, there's some dull parts about it, how a rat decides when to take a drink of water and control things and stuff like that. But overall, I thought the topic was fascinating, and so I really enjoyed it. And so, and you think that doing that kind of degree, the career progression might be to become a psychologist, psychiatrist? Yeah, that was my intention. I thought that occupational psychology was going to be for me, working in organisations, helping, getting people to work more productively, getting people to work together. So after uni, I had my undergrad, and I went traveling basically for another couple of years. So did a ski season in Canada, got into my skiing and stuff like that. But then started doing a master's degree in occupational psychology. So that was at Sheffield. Again, fascinating subject. So where does property come into all this? Well, so by this point, I've been a student for several years, living in student houses. And the penny was starting to drop that actually I could probably do this business better than most of my landlords today and make the money myself. So when I was halfway through my master's degree, me and my sister bought our first house. So my sister had some money, I had a free summer, and we bought basically the worst house on the worst street in Leeds. The worst house on the worst street? Worst house on the worst street. Didn't have a clue what we were doing. The cheapest property. Yeah, this place was a nightmare. I mean, I still own it now, and it's a nightmare now. I mean, to put it in perspective,
During this period on the street, there was at least one murder.
Wow.
So the thing was caught up. And then there was a brothel that got raided by the police. That's the sort of territory we're in. But hey, we didn't know what we were doing. We got it refurbed. We bought it at the right price. We somehow made some money. And we were kind of hooked at that point.
Okay, interesting. And did you buy it through an estate agency, buy it from auction?
Yeah, we didn't have a clue what we were doing. Went straight down to the local estate agent, paid the asking price. And I think we might have got £500 off or £1,000 off.
How much did you buy it for?
64,000, 65,000.
When was that? What year was that?
It was 2006.
And what, has it gone up in value, do you reckon?
Yeah. But I mean, maybe it's 100 grand now, something like that. But it's been rented ever since. I'm just actually evicting the tenant at the moment for not paying a rent for 6 months. It's the pain and hassle you get with low value properties.
Yeah. And that's the ugly duckling of your portfolio right now.
Yeah, I'd like to say it's the only one, but I'd be lying. There's a couple more dogs in there. But you live and learn as you grow. So
property was something that... It was almost a needs must. You were living in these.
Well, no. So what happened is we did our first property and basically spent all of our money, had it all tied up and ran out. And at this point, I've got a job in the army, and so I was going through a selection process, which was pretty arduous and pretty tough. And basically, there's sort of like an 18-month period, 2-year period, where I was pursuing a career in the army. My sister, we had this one buy-to-let. Money was tight and, all that kind of stuff. And so I passed my course in the army and I got mobilised for Iraq. And as I'm being mobilised and sort of doing the final training for the deployment, my friends who I'd passed the selection course with were on the first tranche out there to Afghanistan. And unfortunately, there were 4 deaths out of the 16 of us that had passed the course. So within an 18-month period, I'd gone from a selection course where on the first day, there was 120 of us on a parade square. Look left and right, guys, 120 of you there. To 18 months later, there was 16 of us that had passed the course. So 6 months later, 4 of those guys had been killed. And at that point, I realised that I'm going to get out. So property became my way out, in essence. Or my I had some experience. We had a property under our belt, and I thought, I need to do something different.
Did you have anybody around you, or like friends, family, colleagues that were like investors themselves, or was it just like, I've got this thing now and I kind of understand it and I want to do more? Yeah,
so basically, lived in a lot of rented properties as a student, etc. We bought one, me and my sister. We had probably read a couple of books, and then it was a case of, right, need to get an alternative here. So very quickly, this was 2008 now, the summer of 2008, everyone will remember it well.
Yeah.
So I'm planning my sort of great escape. Yeah. So we're getting all of our ducks in a row in terms of getting our funding sorted, viewing properties on weekends and building it up. And as Lehman Brothers went bust and the mortgage market started to implode, we were basically the last investors that had Mortgage Express mortgage offers.
Right.
So I can't remember how I think it might have been 5 or 6 properties we had lined up that we were buying at quite high prices, but the market was imploding. Yeah. So we went round and basically just chipped the price significantly on each property. Because we had our funding decision principle, funding offered, they just took us the reduced offers. And that basically within 6 months, we'd done 10 properties. And that was enough for us to break free, basically. It replaced our salaries. Well, I won't say replaced our salaries. It was like we were living on beans on toast. But,
just enough to survive.
Yeah, exactly that. But the alternative was potentially much worse. So that was kind of the get out, if you like. And we, in hindsight, we did it all completely wrong because I was in the army and I kind of wanted to leave that for good reasons. But my sister had a job in insurance. So me and my sister were business partners.
Is it older sister, younger sister?
Yeah, younger. And she didn't like her sales job in insurance. So she's like, well, if you're quitting, I'm quitting. So immediately we went from being really quite credit worthy, you know, good income, we could prove funds, all this sort of stuff, to being completely unmortgageable. And we didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. Around this time, my sister managed to get a little credit default on a credit card. You know, I think it was a phone bill for like 30 quid phone bill. And so we were basically screwed, absolutely screwed, but we didn't know what we were doing. So by now, you've got the whole property market imploding. This is sort of 2008, 2009, and things are going off a cliff, really. But where we've bought sort of 10 houses in the last 6-7 months. So the estate agents are loving us. Anything that's coming to the market, they're phoning us up. And, you know, we're getting really good deals presented to us. So at that point, we set up our property sourcing business, set up our renovation business, and set up our letting agency. And that's kind of how we sort of formed out of.
So letting agency, property sourcing business. Was there any education along the way that you kind of groups and
No,
cohorts?
so what you did, I think 2010, 2011, we did a progressive property course.
That must have been quite close to its inception, right?
Yeah, I think we were probably like maybe the first or second year. I can't quite remember exactly. And it was really good for us. You know, it was a really good, you know, place for us to be because, you know, it was useful. And it taught us some stuff. I particularly remember doing the training. They did a one-day course on options. And so it was like, right, that's going to be good for us. So yeah, we followed that for a year or so. And then I actually went to go work for them for the second year. So I was one of their VIP mentors for a year. And it was great. It was great. So we kind of got a nice little business going whereby we'd be, I mean, the numbers are quite crude, but we'd maybe source 4 properties on and earn fees and use that money to buy another property for ourselves.
Got it.
And we just kept growing the portfolio. At this point, we started raising funds privately. So again, my mum was the first person to loan us some money. And
always a good place to start.
Yeah, so you're not going to knock her for that. She sort of saw what we were doing, had trust in us, loaned us some money. I think she was just like overwhelmed and gobsmacked when we actually paid her back. Never mind when she got some interest, and obviously the word spread from there. So ever since then, I've managed to keep a pool of sort of private finance from family, friends of friends. And I've used that as a hunting pot really to do my deals, so I can act as a cash buyer.
Yeah, it's always nice to have in the back of your mind that I've got this safety net here, this little pool of capital that I can really dip into as and when I need to, whilst you go out looking for deals and other funding lines as well.
I mean, this business is not difficult. You basically need a good source of deals and a good source of funding. And it's just matching the two together. Yeah. Pretty much everything else can be bought in as in a service.
That's why I always tell people. I just say, if you've got the money and you've got the actual property itself, then you can do an unlimited amount of deals. As long as you also have the know-how of how to unlock that value.
But that's down to you, though, isn't it? Yeah. You know, that's down to you. But you know, we generally started with not a lot, you know, and sort of hustled our way through it. So
the lettings and the sourcing. The lettings was just to manage your own properties, really, and then we start managing other people's as well?
Yeah, exactly that. So basically our business was we'd find you a property, charge you a fee. I think it was somewhere 4 to 6 grand, whatever it was at the time. And these were typical single-let, buy-to-let vanilla properties.
Like what yields are you kind of talking?
Oh, well, this is up north in Leeds, so we were probably sort of circa 9-10% gross yields, yeah. We'd then give it a renovation, bring it up to sort of a good letting standard. Again, we'd charge a project management fee for overseeing that. And then we'd move it into the letting agency for sort of long-term hold.
So like a turnkey solution almost.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that's what people call it now, sort of package deals, turnkey. So we were kind of at the front of doing that. There weren't a lot of companies doing that when we started. And it worked really well. We've kind of, at the same time, we then started joint venturing with people. So there were some landlords out there whereby we could pool our resources. And so we had various SPVs set up with other people sort of putting money in us matching it. And so we had sort of several SPVs. And that was ace. And I'd had some deals going on my own, separate to my sister. And she had some separate to me. And it was all going quite nicely. I got the portfolio up to about 6.5 million, which was nice. We had the letting agent. We sourced, I think it was probably about 200 houses at the time. We're probably up to about 50 or something now. So, it was a good number.
Yeah.
It was a good number. So, yeah, it was all going quite well.
And with your sister as well, she was doing some deals. Like, is there a slight drifting apart there? Was there a reason for that?
Well, what happened is we figured that we couldn't work together.
Really?
Yeah. So, it's really sad. It kind of breaks my heart. But we...
it's common, though.
Yeah. We were knocking heads. So we had to split the business in terms of operations, who was responsible for what side. Right. So I took the front end, sourcing, renovations, and Jane took the agency.
Right.
And that kind of deconflicted us quite a bit. And, there's no two ways about it. We're very successful, and she's, very competent at what she does. More so than me, I think. But yeah, so the push came to shove when about 2015, she decided to get married, have kids, and that she didn't want to come back to work. So from 2015 to now, we've been going through an unwinding divorce, if you like, whereby I've had to buy the letting agency off her. We've had to sell lots of properties to split the equity out. And it was basically just a restructuring exercise, which we're coming to the end of now. At the same time, we've unwound most of our JVs and stuff like that. And it's been a lot of work, painful and messy, if I'm honest. But there's been significant changes if you look at what's happened in the buy-to-let market over the last few years. We weren't really up for sort of changing with them, and selling a lot of the stuff was the way to go. About all the changes, the Section 24,
Stuff was in your personal name,
we had all of that kind of nonsense. I mean, when we bought the first property, you needed a gas safety certificate and a tenancy agreement. Yeah. And I think now there's about 150 pieces of legislation that regulate a tenancy. And, it's a lot of work. And, the tax side of it has got worse. So So we've been going through this sort of unwinding thing. So as we're unwinding that side down, I start moving into flipping properties. And I flipped about 6 or 7 houses, and I thought, they were big deals at the time compared to the buy-to-let. So a refurb was maybe 100 grand instead of 15 grand in a buy-to-let. And I thought, I should make more money from doing these bigger things. And the truth is, the reality was I never made as much as my spreadsheet said I should at the beginning. So, 50 grand profit might end up being 15 grand. Yeah. And so I was kind of not undeterred by this. I thought, well, what I need to do is I need to scale up and go bigger again. So by 2018, 2019, I'd partnered up with a local construction company, and we started to look at doing sort of much larger deals. Really.
So hopefully that £500,000, £500,000 profit on the spreadsheet will still turn out to be 150, which is still not a bad year.
Exactly.
And if you did 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So it's quite good. So as I'm kind of moving from a letting agency, so I kind of see that I want to go into development and do the bigger deals myself and have less moving parts. So running a letting agency is hard work. Dealing with tenants is hard work. Dealing with the staff to look after your tenants is hard work. And I was pretty much fed up of it, especially with the lower value properties, with all the housing benefit and stuff like that. It was painful. I thought, actually, I'd rather spend my time doing other stuff. So I managed to acquire 3 or 4 other letting agencies and package them into our business, and then sell our lettings portfolio to a much larger company. And so that was quite a good deal that we did 3 years ago.
So you're typically taking 3 smaller companies, which you might get, let's say, for just argument's sake, 2-3x multiple on that on those. But if you package it together, it's a bigger.
Yeah,
you might
exactly.
get 5-6 multiple.
Yeah, that was the idea, and I'm not sure it worked quite that well. But yeah, in essence, letting agents is a great business because it's very predictable, recurring income.
Yeah.
A landlord signs up, they own the house, they're going to keep it, it's long-term investment. Tenant moves in, it's their home, they're going to pay the rent each month. Yeah. It's a very, very nice, predictable business, and I am missing that at the moment. but at the same time, there is a lot of work, and especially a lot of change in regulation. So it was time for me to step out of that for a bit. At least.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, you got right to rent and all sorts of stuff that came in where we were almost being letting agents and landlords are being immigration.
Border
police.
force. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's how this industry's gone.
Yeah. So you started getting the bug for larger scale development.
Yeah.
And also interestingly, so the contracting arm, so you partnered with somebody that was already doing it and they had their own team. So you'd have your ear to the ground. Really close to the costs.
So exactly. So in essence, I partnered with a regional main contractor. They were doing 25 million pound turnover a year.
Wow.
The guys were in the 60s, and in their words, we've been making developers rich for the last 40 years. Now we'd like to have a go ourselves. And so it was a perfect marriage. I was kind of like the younger guy, willing to put in the hours, run around hustling it and what have you. And they had the construction skill and the experience, and it opened a lot of doors for us.
Unbelievable. So what was the first deal that you did with those guys?
Yeah, I don't mind sugarcoating disasters and pain and suffering, because I think everyone needs to know that property development isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It isn't certain. You really have to work for your money. So we actually incurred a £60,000 loss on our first site that we went for. And that was because we were basically trying to buy the upper floors of a retail parade, a couple of shops, and we were trying to get the upper floors and put 14 apartments in it. And so we were buying a long lease, a 250-year or 999-year lease of the property. As we're going through the whole process, legal process, etc., our solicitors are unable to get comfortable that the lease is correct. So they had a defect in the lease, basically regarding the exiting of the property for fire and stuff like this. And at the end of the day, it blew the deal apart. But really? By that point, we were about £60,000 into it, 7 or 8 months of time. It was one of those things. I think in hindsight,
so you didn't even actually buy it. It was just
no. This was just all the fees to the point where we were saying
all the due diligence.
Yeah. I mean, the drama was we had to pay the commitment fee on the funding to keep the funding line open. We were ready to complete, and just that final bit in the lease blew it up. So yeah, it was a baptism of fire. My move into development.
You know what? It's funny because I speak with a lot of people that want to do large scale development, and everybody knows that there's a lot of money that you need to get into it for this, that, and the other. And normally they think it's like the equity to actually get in the deal, but it's actually there's a lot of painful costs of deals that don't go through, where you're doing surveys, you're doing valuations, you're putting money down for legal fees, and the deal doesn't even transpire, and you could be 15, 20, 30, 60 grand in, and if that happens on 2 or 3 deals, you spend a lot of money going absolutely nowhere. You're not even in the deal yet.
I'm more proud that we lost 60 grand on that than built something that we couldn't sell at the end, because it could have been a major disaster.
Absolutely.
That when we pulled the pin on that, whilst it was painful, it could have been a lot worse. And I totally agree. Everybody that I speak to believes that developers make a lot of money for not actually doing a lot. Ask any developers if they think they earn their money. You might see that 20% profit, and it amounts to several £100,000. But what you don't see is the hundreds of thousands of hours that have gone into delivering that scheme from the whole professional team. And so that's why the schemes that do come off do need to be at that 20% profit margin or better.
Absolutely. And so we were talking about the stress that developers go through. From cradle to grave, you've got the identifying the site and then contacting the landowner, and then
because sometimes it is always about maximising the land value. But a lot of landowners, they don't want to wait for you to do that through planning. They don't, there's a whole load of,
well, they want that land value, but they don't want to wait for you to do it.
exactly that. And so, being landowner led is that change in mentality has helped, but also in terms of what we're looking to do. So, I'm back in portfolio building phase at the moment. So my model is to develop sites out for long-term investment. So to refinance and hold them. And, it's going quite well, especially with the permitted development rights that have come in. So the recent changes there have just opened a massive opportunity for people like me. Especially the Class MA and the Class ZA and stuff, where you can sort of repurpose sort of commercial buildings, defunct commercial buildings, So we've had some real success with that.
This episode is sponsored by the PLMD Group. PLMD Group is made up of the PLMD Development, PLMD Estate Management, and PLMD Capital, providing expertise in real estate development combined with asset management. With more than 70 build-to-rent properties and £20 million of assets under management, PLMD's extensive knowledge of local planning policies have resulted in a strong track record, turning liabilities into valuable assets. The group delivers value through a fusion of experience, innovative design, imagination, hands-on management, and sustainable resources. To find out more about PLMD and the services they offer, head to plmdgroup.co.uk. And so there's always the story of the north-south divide in terms of gross development value, and then your build costs are not quite, you don't give you enough margin by the time you're going to build out. So on new build especially.
Yeah, it is fascinating. So I still can't really get my head around it, but very close to where we invest, develop, you can have a negative land value. This means if someone gives you the land for free, you could not build on it and make a profit. Yeah. Build costs have gone through the roof, and in some of these areas, particularly South Yorkshire and up into County Durham area, there's some very low value areas where building to current building regulations is too expensive for what the demand is. So you have to be very, very careful and particular of your sites. I guess once you're in the north, but people still need places to live, businesses still operate, and property is still required. So it does work. At the moment, I basically have figured out, as a rule of thumb, you can't develop new build residential in an area where it's less than £300 a square foot average sale price. And that just cuts out massive areas and gives us the places that we can focus on.
That £300 the average price per square foot in the area. So you've got it. So you're gonna hopefully have properties that eventually come to market that are a bit higher than the average.
Yeah, and it's a sweeping statement. So every village will have, and every town will have Millionaires Row, where the houses are more expensive, and that's usually both in gross amount, but also in per square foot amount as well. So it's like micro areas as well you've got to consider. So you can't kind of like just rule off massive towns and stuff, because there will be pockets where things can work and do work. And that comes down to market knowledge. As a developer, you need to be completely on the ball with activity levels, sale price levels, sale time level. You really need to know those metrics inside and out. When you're doing it for investment, I don't think it's as important, because you're holding it for the long term, and if you get it slightly wrong, you can just ride it out over time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's personally why I always like buy and hold strategy in general. It just gives you a little bit more peace of mind. The only thing that gets squeezed is the
equity you've got in,
and the equity that you leave in is a little bit more. But in terms of conversions on new builds, do you have a preference as a contractor developer?
So new build is by far easier and more predictable. Yeah. You know your build costs. You can get a main contractor. You can get a fixed price. You kind of know where you are. Trade specification, employers' requirements, and off you go to tender. A year later, you've got your property. Conversions are a bloody nightmare, because you do not know what you're dealing with until you've stripped that building out. Yeah, and I've got one at the moment, like the asbestos we've found that didn't come up on the survey, the structural issues that have found once we've taken the plaster off. These are all unknown costs that you can't predict. So you have to put a big, hefty contingency into a conversion, which then makes them difficult to stack. I think the other thing is a lot more sort of SME newbie developers prefer conversions, because they can kind of see what's there and what they're dealing with. And so they shy away from the new build stuff. So I think it is harder to find new build plots, especially sort of sub 10 units.
Yeah.
It's very competitive for that stuff. But in essence, what I'm doing now, especially for growing my portfolio, is I'm using these small developments. I'm developing so that in areas that are higher value, so I can keep. I'm creating better stock for the portfolio. Yeah. So we had very large, low value, high yielding stock. Going forward, I'd rather have fewer higher value properties in better areas. And sort of like, you know, you compress that yield down, and you're not making huge cash flow off it, but you've got a nice appreciating asset. So, exactly. So that's kind of what I'm using.
Better tenant quality as well. So you get less void, you get less maintenance and hassle. Makes sense.
Exactly that.
And in terms of your favorite deal that you've done to date, what's the like? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I love deals. So I'm the front end fund. Everything's the success and victory into it. I love the deal. I absolutely love the deal. My favorite, it's probably one of the first ones where a bit of an odd one for it as a favorite, I guess. But we secured a HMO property on a 17-year lease option.
Jesus.
Where the lease option monthly fee was basically the mortgage. And it helped the woman who owned it massively at the time.
Was she negative equity? Or?
Yeah, it was pretty much negative equity. She'd evicted all her tenants because she had a sale going through. The sale fell through and she couldn't pay the mortgage the next month. Oh, wow. And we were able to step in straight away and do that. So I really like that deal.
How did you source it? Was that all direct? Everything you do now direct to vendor?
Yeah, it was direct. We paid an agent. No, we paid a sourcer a fee for that one. So, you know, we're happy to pay fees where fees are due, and people pay us fees where, you know, we've got something that they need. So, yeah, we paid someone for that one, and it worked out really well. At the moment, though, I'm more into the larger site deals.
When you say large, define large to you, because large for somebody might be it's very different.
I appreciate that. So I've got a deal that we're doing at the moment where I've acted as an agent introducing the site to a national supermarket chain, and it's a relatively big site, 5.5 acres. And it's in a very prestigious market town in our area. It's quite a contentious planning application, but you know, it's a good 6-figure fee that I'm earning from that one, and I really like that because it was an allocated site in the local plan. Every developer within 100 miles had it on their radar, and I somehow managed to get my foot in the door, build the rapport with the chief exec of the company that owns the land, and got the deal done. And basically, I was like, there's some kudos in that when it's been on every sort of professional agent's radar for 10 years or so, and little old me managed to pull it off.
See, and because of your diverse background in terms of how you've approached property, you seem to be able to not only just do the development, but you do the landlording and investment. And you do the deal sourcing, so you can kind of almost do the agency side of it as well.
Yeah, well, I've got a team of people. You know, you have a small, you know, I employ a few people, and we have a wider team of, you know, outsourced consultants basically, and companies working for us. So yeah, I'm not doing everything myself. I pretty much focus my time on the front end, land and planning. Really, I think that's where you add the most value. And once you've got the land and the planning sorted, that's where the greatest profit is made. And from that point, you can outsource a lot of the functions, such as construction. So I'm doing a £550,000 refurb at the moment, but I'm only on site for half an hour a week, just checking on progress. So you know, that's kind of my.
Is that still with the guys that you were doing the contracting with, or
no? They've retired now. So yeah, this is a separate setup.
And so out of everything that you do, you say that the biggest value add is through the land and the planning.
Yeah, if you can negotiate the deal at the front end correctly, and you can maximize the land value by putting the correct planning application on there, that's where you make the most money. And development for me is about changing the use or adding the square footage to a particular piece of land or building. And that's really where you add the most value. If you get that bit wrong, it doesn't matter how good you are at building something, you're not going to pull it back.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And then the landowners that you deal with, that you speak with, probably on a rate. I mean, how many landowner meetings do you have a week on average?
So we send 100 letters out, make contact with 100 people. I probably get 8 to 10 responses from 100 letters. From the 8 to 10 responses, half of them are just completely bonkers and it's not worth me going to meet them. The other half, it's definitely worth me go meeting them. Out of the other half that I want to go meet, I might get 2 or 3 meetings. So probably, let's say 1 a week is good. And that's the sort of numbers that I'm finding from sort of my marketing campaign.
And the landowners are generally quite forthcoming and very easy to deal with.
It just completely depends, and that's what I love about this business is you just never know who you're going to meet when you open that door. And what I'm finding as well, moving into the larger sites or the more prestigious properties, and the people are just more interesting. The stories are fascinating. I've got a deal going on at the moment with a care home company that's got a chain of care homes, and we're looking to convert some of their care homes into apartments, the ones that are not working. But these guys are just really interesting, really solid businesses, and it's a nice way to spend your time, sort of speaking to these people, negotiating deals that work for both of you, and getting things done.
And imagine that a landowner, you've done your back of the fag packet calculation. You think, okay, this site's probably worth 500-600 grand. It's a good, decent sized number. You think it's. And then, do you ever ask the landowner, what do you want? And if you do they ever say like £1 million, £2 million?
Yeah, well, everyone wants £1 million or £10 million for everything. That is, they're the two go-to figures, nice and round. And
if it's a small site, it's £1 million. If it's a big site, 10 million.
Yeah, exactly. So I never ask a landowner what they think it's worth or what they want. I listen to what they need. I go away, do my research, and I try and tell them the truth and be upfront. So I've got a filing cabinet full of sites that are not agreed because the landowner's expectations are unrealistic at that time. Invariably what happens 3, 6, 9, 12 months later, hopefully after they've had a failed transaction with another developer, they come back to me and we dust my old file off, brush up the figures, and we have a more open and honest conversation. So, and that's the nature of it.
So you do a lot of follow-up?
Always follow up, yeah. So every week, every week you're following up with people. And
do you ever get, does it ever get, do you ever get like hate mail? Okay, people like saying, you greedy developer, like get off my...
People love me. So the people that I approach, I'm doing them the biggest favor you can imagine. They've got a problem with a property or a piece of land and they don't know what to do. They need me. They need someone like me that's got the skill set to maximize the value in it. So I'll give you an example for a site we've got at the moment, and this one is driving me mad. So it's a 2.5 acre site. It's allocated for housing. You get about 40 houses on there, and it has a ransom strip. So there's a strip of land that goes around it, so you can't get access. So I speak with the landowner and I agree a deal on the land. There's a few constraints. There's an archaeology problem and there's some drainage issues likely. You'll need pumping. So there's a couple of expensive unknown costs there. So I agree a promotion agreement. This is where we take a percentage of the end value of the land and we split it. Basically, we split the value of the land once we know what the planning is and the costs are going to be. So it's completely transparent. We're both sitting on the same side of the negotiating table trying to work on the problem, which is this land, and in this case, the ransom strip. So I approached the guy who's got the ransom strip, and he's really clear. I want £250,000. I'm like, well, there's no negotiating with it. So I shake his hand and say, we'll do £250,000 for your ransom strip. But he then says, I'm not ready to move forward with the deal. I've got some things to sort out first. And it all goes quiet for 9 months. I get the phone call last week. Kris, I want my 250 grand. I'm ready to do it. I'm like, okay, great, awesome. I phone up the landowner. Oh, Kris, I'm really sorry. My mother's died. So I'm like, oh, I feel so sorry for you. We've not managed to get this site moved forward and progressed. But what that means is we've got to go through probate before we can sign the option. So whilst we've got an exclusivity in place, and if she was still alive, we could have signed the option under his power of attorney. Now we've just got to wait for the probate to come through. And so why I'm telling you this kind of thing is every site is a lot more complicated than you imagine. You look at stuff and think it's straightforward, and I've not had anything straightforward. There's always something. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with people's lives, and there's always there's always a complication to it. And that's why you need to have a big pipeline of deals. You need to keep in touch with people constantly, never burn your bridges, always be able to go back to it at some point in the future. And if you work really hard for a year or two, you'll start getting some deals through. It's, I've proved it.
And you think that that horizon of, working away at this pipeline, being patient, aggressively patient for like 2 years, you'll start to see those fruits bear maybe 24 months from the day that you start sending out letters?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, well, we probably don't want to go into the state of the planning system. I mean, God knows what's going on, but
That's for another time.
Yeah, maybe another time. Yeah, but in essence, it's diabolical, the planning system at the moment. They're under a lot of pressure. So it can take a year, in essence, to negotiate a deal, get it through legals, get a scheme worked up, submit a planning application, get the report back, get your approval or your appeal or whatever, whichever process, that can be a 12-month process at the moment easily.
And I think that's what people always, again, we would go back to what we were saying earlier, is that everyone thinks developers make all this money, but there's sometimes these cases where you might be waiting that 12, 24 months, taking it through planning, and you don't actually get the planning in the end. So again, you spend all this money on consultants and fees and agricultural reports and this, that, and the other.
Yeah. But you should be, it's your job to make sure you get planning, and you need to know what you're doing, and you need to instruct your professional team, your architect, your planning consultant, first consultee, consultants, trees, drains, whatever, to make sure that you're doing a good, proper job. If you get a refusal, it's because you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Have
you had many refusals?
Touch wood, no refusal yet. On the large scheme that I'm acting as the introducer for a supermarket chain, they've been asked to withdraw their application and resubmit. And that's basically, go back and have a look at the scheme. But yeah, it's one of those. I think if you do the job properly and you spend the time, effort and money up front, you shouldn't be getting refusals. But, don't get me started on a planning committee, because that's, it is what it is at the end of the day. We live in a very unfair world, I think, when it comes to planning for developers. And that's why we're doing a lot more permitted development schemes now, and using the PD rights, or using PD rights as a fallback for a new application, just to give us the confidence that we will get something on there.
Do you feel, do you have any, because you obviously are very much a victim of the planning system. Do you ever at late night think, how could this be better? Do you have any suggestions amongst the circles of people that you kind of hang around with? Is there any good suggestions that we could put forward to make the planning system better? Some people were saying that the other day that I was having a conversation, they were saying we should have a fast track service. So for developers, because you might have like this non-contentious, like I want to put, a 3-meter extension at the back, and it's a homeowner. Like if they get it in 3-6 months' time, it doesn't really affect their lives.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Commercial people, like I want to pay a little bit more to get a quicker decision.
Yeah, I think the two changes I would probably make to the way the planning system is are employ and pay enough planners. So actually have people working for the council that are getting paid a fair wage, and there's enough of them. I've just done an application, and the planning officer said she had 86 other cases.
Wow. And
I'm thinking, she hasn't got a lot of time to deal with my case, so I need to make this as simple as possible, and it's tough for them. So I think that's the one. I think that'd be a good idea. That would smooth things a lot. And then I think they should just abolish the planning committee. I think it's completely wrong that lay people that don't have a experience or understanding of building, town planning, construction, development get to make the decision on schemes. And especially when it goes against what the officer's recommendation is. So an officer can recommend a scheme for approval, the planning committee can vote it down.
And they just do it emotionally.
Yeah, and it's all political at the end of the day. And at the moment, I think we're seeing a lot of refusals in a couple of the boroughs where I'm working, just because the elections are coming up, and the people that vote tend to be the NIMBYs.
Yeah.
And any elected member that passes some, slightly contentious scheme isn't going to get voted in next time. And I think that's wrong. So I think if we could have a professional second-tier decision-making, that would massively help our system.
That makes sense. It's been quite evident since we've been talking that you've got this breadth of knowledge and experience. You're starting to you've already set up an education initiative for helping the next generation of developers.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly that. So with my good pal, Jason Livin, who hopefully you're going to get on this podcast sooner or later, we're setting up our mentoring sort of company. We called ourselves Renegade Real Estate, just because what we've done is very unconventional. And Jason will tell you his story when you meet him. But I mean, he has been through some dark places with his portfolio of properties and done some deals with banks and wrestled stuff out of receivers. Very exciting situations. And what I'm doing is unconventional compared to the regular sort of house building developers, where we want to help people build sustainable schemes for long-term investment and to set themselves up in a professional way, doing things right and proper. So we're looking for people that maybe have dipped their toe in with property investment, maybe even development, but they're looking to sort of be held accountable and to get some deals over the line. So take a year, take 18 months, and actually come away physically with some sort of deals and some equity in stuff. I think there's a lot of training courses out there now where they can give you the knowledge in a day or two, but that's not really what most people need. Most people need the guidance to know when to pull the trigger and to keep going. And that's...
You can read the book, you can
that,
get the theory in a day or two or a course or something like that, but it's the day-to-day practice of kind of like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah, but also when money's involved and large sums of money, your emotions take over and your brain doesn't always work like it should. And people do crazy things when money's involved. So I think having a mentoring group and being part of a community where people are doing the same thing, where we've done it lots of times together, we can help you and guide you. And I won't say guarantee your results, because people are going to have to work hard to be on our scheme, but it's definitely going to make it more likely that people succeed.
Yeah, and you've benefited from those sorts of things, going back to the progressive stuff. I know we both have a friend in common with Mr. Paul Higgs. Yeah. So you've kind of been there, done that. It's worked for you, and now it's your time to share your knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. We're not the new kids on the block. I've not gone and rented a Lamborghini and taken a couple of YouTube videos and said I can do it. Anyone's welcome to come and look at umpteen properties I've owned or developed, sites I've done, and sort of get to know us and see, what it's like for us day to day, hustling deals over the line and, and sort of getting by in this sort of crazy property world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear that you are through and through a property person. For people out there that want to get into property or, want to be growing in it, what are the characteristics that you think that they need to have? What are the traits they need to have to be successful in property?
Well, you're asking a trained psychologist on traits. This is a dangerous thing. So I'm a massive advocate of psychometric testing. And there's two types of psychometric tests. You have personality tests, which is your preferred behavior type. And then you have ability test, which is basically how smart you are. And I think everybody should do those sort of tests prior to starting in business, any career, and work out how you like to work, what you like to do, and make sure that's the role you take in any business you do. Yeah. It's very easy to think, or very easy to get into a situation where you're doing a job that you're ill-suited to, or your team is ill-suited to. So, design it with purpose, design it to be successful. You are who you are. It's very difficult to change some of those things. So, it's a lot easier to ride the horse in the way it's going. I'm very good at, my preferred thing is speaking to people and being sort of sociable and sort of the sales side of things. I am terrible at the admin. So I make sure I've got someone to do that. So that would be my sort of first thing to do when it comes to getting into property.
So it's interesting. See, I mean, it is a very interesting approach, because anybody can do it really. It's just about knowing what skill sets are required, what you're actually quite good at, and then making sure you compensate by having other people around you to help do those things.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think why I've been quite successful is because, I'm not actually that good at a lot of stuff. And because I'm not that good at it, I've realized early on, and I've found people to do it for me. And so I've got a small team of employees that work for me direct, that pick up the things that I'm frankly not very good at or not interested in doing. And then we have a wider team of people that work for us as well. So, you can't learn it all. You can't do everything. So focus on what you want to do. Like I say, my purpose for business is to be in business for a long time.
One of the things about being in business and building a team is culture as well. Is that something that you focus any attention on?
Yeah, I think culture's massive, and culture's the everyday little things, the way that you act and behave and work and stuff like that. And I like to think that we've got quite a good culture for us in our business. We're all the same age, or we're all we do think work in a professional way, and it's having those set norms in your group and getting those established. So we're not like a Google where there's sofas and things like that.
Beanbags.
Yeah, beanbags and calling that culture. We're about getting into work, working damn hard, getting the result, and then going home to see our kids, and so making sure our families come first.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in terms of your investment and development aspirations, where would you like to be?
Yeah, good question. So it's always good to have goals and dreams and aspirations and visions and all that kind of stuff. I'm a massive believer in it. So I'm looking to get my personal portfolio probably doubled in size, which isn't that difficult now. That's an achievable goal. That's just going to take time. What I'm more keen on is looking at the other sort of business opportunities around property. I'm really looking forward to our mentoring business, just because I spend a lot of time on my own or with a landowner in an office, and actually meeting people in a similar position to me and helping them through and guiding them through. I think I'm going to find that quite rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving back is always, I find it very, very rewarding. It's such a great benefit for me to be able to spend time with people like yourself who've done so many things. It's great to have somebody that's really done one thing, a lot of it, and gone to some amazing places. But I think I come from a background as well where I've been an estate agent and a lender and broker and landlord and this, that, and the other. So it's also quite inspiring to hear other people that have been on a similar journey and have got that breadth of experience.
Yeah, you can continue redefining yourself. You don't have to pigeonhole as one thing forever. Yeah, I think, like you say, we work for a very long time, and mix it up. Look what the market needs at the time. Create a business out of it. When it stops working, sell that business, or when you've had enough of it, sell the business, make some money, move into something else. And that's what I'll continue doing with the underlying theme of property, and
exactly
continually growing a portfolio.
We'll definitely have you back to see how all of the training's going, the projects are going, how you get on with the site with the landowner whose mum passed away, unfortunately. But if people want to reach out to you and find you, what's the best way they can?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is my preferred social media channel at the moment. So if anyone just Googles me, connect with me, follow me. I do regular posts, updates, so you can see what's kind of going on in my world. We do speak at some very sort of networking events at times and things like that. So yeah, just connect with us and sort of follow our journey through this. It's be good to grow a network of people.
Happy days. Thank you very much for joining us, Kris.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Was that all right?